Earlier today, Genshin Impact put out the version 3.3's banners for the second half. And you might be thinking if it's worth your primos to pull for the 5 stars on these banners, or even the 4 stars, or maybe you already have the characters and are on the fence if building those characters would be worth your time and resources. Don't worry, I've got you covered on that part, because in this video we're going to do a banner review for all the banners on the second half of version 3.3. But before we begin, if you guys like the stuff I make and want to support me doing it, the best way to do would be to leave a like, subscribe, and make sure to turn on the bell so you don't miss my future uploads. Your support really gives me the motivation to keep going and make these videos possible. And with that being said, back to the video. In the second phase of version 3.3, we have 2 reruns of previous characters, Raiden Shogun and Kamisato Ayato, the former getting their second rerun and the latter their first. Both of these characters are great in their own regards, but they come with their own nuances. Starting with the Electro Mommy Raiden Shogun, she's an excellent Electro DPS, sub DPS, and a Hyper Bloom support. Her elemental skill has a very long duration and helps provide sustained Electro application while she's off field, which is really helpful for proccing Electro related reactions like Electro Charged in Taser teams, Superconduct in physical teams, and Hyper Bloom or Quicken in Dendro teams. Meanwhile, her Elemental Burst skill has a very big damage first slash, and then for a period of time she wields her Electro Sword and can perform like a proper Electro DPS would, while also regenerating a good amount of energy for her team. All that sounds good, doesn't it? But as good as her elemental skill sounds, it actually doesn't put out as much damage as we'd get out of other off-field supports like Albedo and others, so its practical application is pretty much limited to proccing reactions and the little bit of off-field damage that it does. Even her elemental burst requires her to build up resolve stacks, which is shown by this circle thingy that pops up when you use her elemental skill, and that is based off the energy cost of other party members, which is why Raiden teams are most of the times built with characters having burst costs of around 60 to 80 energy just to reach maximum resolve stacks in just one rotation. Most notable of them is Kujo Sara, but more on her later. It still does not feel right that most of her DPS potential is locked behind a second constellation. And not to mention the emblem domain is notorious for having bad drop rates, because as a F2B player you need to run a very balanced emblem set, which requires you to have certain substats at very particular levels to make her a proper DPS. Which is why there has been a rise in Raiden users going for the Hyper Bloom playstyle, because Hyper Bloom requires you to stack only Elemental Mastery while you can pretty much ignore any other stats. Although building a minimum crit rate or energy recharge is nice, but it's not at all a requirement. Overall, if I had to give Raiden a rating as a 5-star character, it would be 7 out of 10. Should you pull for her if you like running Electro and such reactions, or maybe you have a secret crush on the Hyper Bloom like me, then yes, definitely. Although you might want to get a C6 Kujo Sara as well if you're looking to make her a proper DPS. But more on that later. The second 5-star Kamisato Ayato, in contrast to Shogun, is a much simpler character. His entire kit works together to empower his normal attacks, which is pretty similar to how Yoimiya works. You press elemental skill, get elemental infusion, and just slay away at the enemies. His elemental burst works very similar to Ganyu's burst, where he creates a huge AoE and within it, Bloom Water Blades, which is essentially big fucking raindrops, if I might call that, fall down on enemies, all while Ayato gets to enjoy a nice normal attack damage bonus as well. Basically, as Ayato, you'll get a load of field time and you'll have enough to make the most out of it. Being Hydro Element user also comes with some perks, and that is you can put him in a lot of teams like Electro Charged, Freeze, Bloom, or Hyper Bloom, Vaporize, or maybe any other weird team you might fancy, to be honest. Building Ayato is exactly the same as Yoimiya, as both of them have the same best in slot artifact sets, that is Shimenawa's Reminiscence and Echoes of an Offering. Personally, I do not own Kamisato Ayato on my account, so I'm not well aware of his downsides. So if any of you watching have Ayato on your account, it'd be great if you guys could share some insight in the comments to help those who might not have him. Overall, if I had to give Ayato a rating as a 5-star character purely based off what I know about him, it would be an 8 out of 10. Although I would take that with a grain of salt. Should you pull from him? Yes, I mean Hydro characters are kinda in a premium state right now, so if you're not saving for any future 5 stars that you really want, I'd advise you to get Ayato. Coming over to the banner 4 stars, we have Kujo Sara, Rosaria, and Sayu. Now, Sara is an attack buffer like Bennett, but in all honesty, she's more like a dumbed down Walmart version of Bennett because her attack buff pales in comparison to Bennett, both in the amount of buff you get and the duration. Her elemental skill and burst mechanics also feel quite clunky when you have to be within a certain AoE to receive the buff from a skill, and her burst actually locks you into position after the animation, so there is a chance you might take damage in that instance. But where Kujo Sara really shines though is when she has her 6th constellation unlocked and she is put in an Electro DPS team. Your C6 Sara actually gives Electro DPSs an attack buff as well as increases electro damage crit damage by 60%, and 60% is not a small amount. That's like one whole weapon. That's like a Staff of Homa. As for her rating, I'd give her banner spot a good 8 out of 10, partly because she's on banner with Raiden. So if you're pulling for Raiden, there's a good chance you will get her and unlock some constellations for her as well, unless the banner just imposes a Sayu Rosaria impact on you, that is. Second on the 4-star list, we have Rosaria, and she is primarily a crit rate buffer. Basically, she provides a chunk of her own crit rate to her teammates, at least that's what she's supposed to do, which is why most people just stack crit rate on her artifacts, because 15% crit rate is quite a lot, plus her cryo application is pretty consistent off field. Also, because she's a cryo user, we can put her in the melt and freeze teams, but most notably in physical teams if she has a 6th constellation. Even the physical characters are now like a dying niche of characters, with the last bastion of them being Eula. There's a set of characters you would want to use with her, and Rosaria just happens to be one of them. As for her rating, she'll be getting a modest 8 out of 10, partly because she's probably the most consistent off-field cryo applicator, and her spot on the banner with Ayato lets you at least make a freeze team with them. Finally, Sayu. She's primarily an anemo healer, where most of her kit scales off attack percent and has a passive which scales her healing off her elemental mastery as well. Plus, she has a very fun elemental skill animation, which in all honesty is probably the best way to travel across Teyvat. Also, did I mention she has a talent that lets you get closer to crystal flies? Yeah, that's one passive talent I didn't know I needed. She's also a pretty decent healer. The only downside is being her healing can only heal one character at a time, and that her burst cannot snapshot attack buffs, which is a huge downside in my opinion. Plus, if you have healers like Jean, Chi-Chi, Kokomi, or Barbara, her healing is like a Walmart version, let's just say that. And let's not even compare to Bennett. He should literally be a 5-star character at this point in all honesty. For her rating, I'd give her an okay 5 out of 10, but that's mostly because she has a very fun animation. But unfortunately, what she does is not that great and is already being done better by other characters. So unless you want a fancy animation and a passive to catch crystal flies, I'd say she's a no-go. Finally, the weapon banner. We've got 2 really good 5-star weapons on the banner, Haran Geppaku Futsu and the Engulfing Lightning. Now, these 2 are the best in slot for the 2 5-star characters on the banner, but even if you don't have those 2 characters, the sword can just be a pure stat stick on any character, while the polearm can save you from the notoriously boring activity of fishing and getting the catch. Therefore, anyone who uses the catch can use Engulfing Lightning as well. The only worthwhile 4-star weapon on the weapon banner are Favonius Lance and the Sacrificial Fragments. But even after all these pros, I'm going to recommend you against wishing on the weapon banner as an F2P or low spender, because good teams can be made with 4-star weapons. It's not an absolute necessary, which is also why I'm not going to rate the weapon banners. Overall, the character banners ratings would be Raiden banner a solid 7 out of 10, and Ayato banner topping it off just a bit of a fraction, 7.25 out of 10. Yes, I'm doing the mathematical average here, don't mind me. With that all being said, you should play your game how you like. Genshin is a story RPG first, a dungeon crawler later. Don't fall into the fear of missing out, and don't let others tell you how to play your game. I, for one, am going to save up my primogems for Deya when she comes out, so no Ayato for me. Anyways, I hope this video was helpful to you, and if it was, do leave a like, subscribe, and turn on the bell notifications so you don't miss my future uploads. If you want to drop in on my other socials, the links will be in the description, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!